This little guy right here is me. I remember when I first started out lacing up the skates for the first time of many. I was using a walker-type contraption for old people to help me stay up. My mom and dad told me that I cried the entire time and wanted to get off. A little bit of an exaggeration, but you get my point. When I started hockey, I played forward and was forced at the age of 12 to stop and play defense instead. This was the first real challenge in hockey I would have to overcome. Instead of letting it get me down or making me quit hockey, I used it to my advantage. You see, this previous forward experience made me a very dynamic offensive defenseman. Most defensemen are stay-at-home players and only play defense. Since I was previously a forward, I had the hunger of being in the offensive zone, so I made the entire ice my home. This offensive ability worked to my advantage and still does to this day, making me an asset. I overcame this challenge successfully and learned from it, instead of letting it get me down. My perspective of the incident is what really helped me, looking at it in a positive way. From this, you may be able to tell I haven't always enjoyed hockey. I actually used to kind of dislike it. I was not always a good hockey player, and when you're middle of the pack in something, you don't enjoy it. I would come home and have to deal with my dad lecturing me on what I should have done better and what I needed to work on, and that's not fun. Today, however, the sport's what I live for. I have never been able to imagine a life without it. Hockey used to just be a sport to me, but as I grew older, it became so much more. This change on how I viewed hockey came as I grew up. Maturing came with age, and my perspective on everything I encountered, including hockey, of course, changed. I learned that the way you live your life depends on perspective, to worry less and smile more. That perspective change in my life made everything I would ever encounter a new journey. Being an athlete, specifically a hockey player, it can be tough to try and stay positive all the time. Every time I'm on the ice, I have to get better, so criticism has to take place. I have to be able to take any criticism I'm given and not let it get me down. The other thing about being an athlete is every once in a while, you'll go through a slump. It happens. You get angry and frustrated, and things only get worse. To counter these feelings and views, I developed a tactic that I never thought of using. I developed what we call superstitions to get through slumps, and I was convinced that these superstitions actually help me. For those who aren't familiar, superstitions are like routines we use to kind of give ourselves at ease that something good is going to happen, that we're in control. But it was little things like the order I put my gear on and how nobody could touch my stick after I taped it. That may seem silly, but to me, they seem sane. But eventually, I took a microscope and looked at what I was doing and saw something amazing. I noticed that it wasn't actually these superstitions that were helping me. What was really going on was inside my brain. The way I was thinking was changing. I realized if I focused more on the good stuff more, I would then gain confidence. The more I focused on these positives, the less I saw the negatives. Of course, I'm not perfect. I had mistakes, and I need to look at those in order to get better. But it happens, you know? So I love this quote by Stephen Leacock. He says, "I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more I have of it." This quote best fits the situation because when I think of positive thoughts, I honestly feel like I have a lot more good luck in my life. I'm more motivated, and I work harder at opening doors that flow in rivers of good luck. You may be wondering, though, what really made you change the way you think? There had to be something much bigger than this. Of course there is. We all know it's tough to stay positive when you're injured. As an athlete, I've had minor injuries and played through them. I'm a very stubborn player and will play even if I'm not 100%. I don't like to get off the ice or field, especially for an injury. I fractured many bones in my foot and fractured my arm, but the worst, however, came 2 years ago playing an unimportant game in Virginia, which was actually this team, which was ironic. It was the morning after Halloween of 2015. I'm 14 years old, just keep that in mind, it's pretty young. During the game, I felt great. The first period, I already had a goal and an assist, and everything on the ice was going my way. It was just one of those games. I remember in the second period, I was sitting on the bench, looked over to my coach, and I said, "I'm feeling 3 goals today, man." Looking back, it's not the smartest move, because that's called jinxing it. The ironic part is, after that, I sustained one of my worst injuries ever since I started the sport. So here's what happened. I was going through a neutral zone, and it's the center of the ice, for those who don't know. And I tried to sidestep a kid as he was coming at me, and I jumped to the side. And what happened was he went to hit me and missed my body, but put all his power, and it went into my right wrist, clipping it. I immediately fell to the ice, and my gloves went flying. I knew that moment that something was not right. Throwing my gloves was probably not a good thing because it probably made it worse when we think about it. But my arm was completely straight, but in S shape. My teammates, naturally in S shape. So my teammates, they were flipping out, right? But I was only angry because whenever I get injured, I just get angry. And I went right to the locker room, and I just couldn't help but look down. Though I tried, I couldn't help it. I was so horrific, yet I had to look at it just to make sure it was real because it didn't feel like reality. But I was taken to the hospital, and when I got there, they had to straighten the bone temporarily until I went back to North Carolina, and that was mentally tough, seeing something like that right in front of you. You can imagine how much that hurt physically and mentally. A young kid thinking his hockey career was coming to an end just as he had started to really enjoy it. I arrived back home and went to have it checked out. Obviously, there was pins in it. What sucked was I was walking around school with a messed up wrist for a whole day, which was really weird. But imagine experiencing like a gruesome injury and going to school the next day with it blue and black, only being supported by a temporary cloth. When I went to the hospital, went back in NC, it was diagnosed a clean break in my radial bone, and I bent my ulna, and I need surgery. And those of you who aren't familiar, the ulna is the inside, or the ulna is the outside bone, and the radius is the inside. Oh wait, no, ulna is the outside, radius is the inside. And so I completely broke the radial bone, and the ulna was bent this way. So luckily that didn't break, which helped a lot, because that would have been way worse. But physical therapy, it took 3 pins to put it back in place, which that was the weirdest part for me, because I'd move it and I'd feel it like creaking around, and my dad messed with me, which was the worst part. He told me that they were gonna leave the pins in, and I was freaking out because I was so young, but it took them out, thankfully. But it took about 2.5 months to heal. I had to do physical therapy, but it sucked, but I had to do what I had to do. But this event, it really stuck with me every time I get on the ice. Realizing you're so close to losing something you love really hits you hard. It made me realize that I was not guaranteed this sport, and it made me realize to leave everything out on the ice, because it could be my last time. I used to take my hockey career for granted, and I didn't realize how blessed I was. Ever since that moment, I've realized that life is really short, and that one day it can be turned upside down. That life is too short to go around thinking negatively, too short not to smile every day. I like to say I'm here for a good time, not a long time. In order to achieve that, I have to think and act positively. I've experienced so many events in my life, both good and bad. Because of that, I've been able to change the way I view life and how I view myself. The way you view life determines how you live life. It's that simple. And these hockey-related events have helped me realize that perspective is everything. Hockey was just a doorway to a much bigger picture. It changed the way that I live everyday life outside of hockey as well. The way I view friends, school, or anything that life throws my way. The way you see the world is up to you, but I know the world changes when we change our perspective. Thank you.